I'm glad I didn't.
Don't say
call
that's
it
one.
sick.
I like one. That's just
I can't get over how happy.
I know. I'm not gonna ask you. I'm not gonna ask you how I like it.
Oh, you like it like that?
I like double page.
Oh, no.
My God, it's all right.
I know, so you're lucky.
Practice.
Yes, I saw it. No, I was that big.
Yeah, I think you
This is where you have to adapt and change.
These are with Susan's corrections.
Change and adapt. He didn't get to the gavel.
He didn't give me the gavel.
What's the
Uh-oh.
This is not the gavel.
The mayor has it.
There you go.
He locked it up in his secret compartment.
It's like a scepter, that's the power.
Yes. Should we go ahead and start? All right. I call this meeting to order. Work session for April 9th, 2013. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
Yes, Mayor Davis, absent. Mayor Pro Tem Rebecca Chase Williams,
Here.
District 1, and Pro Tem Councilmember Jim Iyer, District 2.
Here.
Councilmember Bates Madison, District 3. And Councilmember Joe Gebbia, District 4.
Here.
Councilmember Madison and has not arrived yet, and the mayor is out on vacation.
But we have a quorum. Is that correct?
Yeah, 3's a quorum.
All right. Well, I'm obviously here because our mayor is on spring break. He's enjoying it. So we will push through without him. So let's go ahead and get started. Do we want to go through the meeting agenda first?
Probably go through the
work agenda?
Work agenda first, and then we'll go back up.
All right, so let's start with the upcoming agenda items. The first one is fee simple town home code amendment discussions. Are we hearing from Susan Cannon?
It's my understanding that there's a preference by the council to look at doing some type of ordinance amendment or consider what we may have currently on our books for fee simple townhomes. And I actually have been looking at some surrounding jurisdictions and what they may have available. And I've also been looking at what you currently have in your code. I'm currently looking at what PC might outline. Because if we can remedy what we have with what's on the books, then we might as well. But I'm looking at whether or not we can do that. You have a classification called pedestrian community district, and it has an allowance for single family attached. So I'm actually looking at whether or not we can accommodate that idea of fee simple development with that, but I'm not sure that we can accomplish what we want to yet with that. So we're looking at what we can do with what you have and looking at some surrounding jurisdictions and what they have available. At this point, I'm not quite sure what kind of density you may be looking at or what you want to accomplish.
It's really it's a reconfiguration of the condo code because the condo market or the current residential market doesn't allow condos. You can't get financing for a condo, so they have to be fee simple. The DeKalb County changed several just before we became a city. The Brookhaven went from fee simple to condo, from condo to fee simple, as did the one behind the town Brookhaven, which the name escapes me.
Savoy.
Savoy. And that was done by variance. I'm not exactly sure how, but I remember that it was brought before the DeKalb BZA late last fall, and they waved their wand and became fee simple, which is pretty much required now. The FHA and other folks, the main lenders, condo is taboo right now, so they've all had to go to fee simple to create that. So from a density standpoint, it's really no different. So it's just changing the name so that the ownership, rather than owning the inside of the wall, you're owning the dirt under the unit, and it's allowing us to do that. So, and it was described to me as essentially trying to figure out how to float fee simple lots in a piece of property that aren't really tied to anything that a public street or something like that. So you end up with easements and those types of requirements so that access is available to to these individual lots.
Well, as a staff, what we want to be careful about is that we produce for you a product, or an ordinance that will work. And there are a lot of different fee simple amendments and ordinances out there, so we have to be careful about lot width, coverage, and those kinds of things. And what you run into is sometimes you see it requiring a public road frontage, but if you want to have a cluster development, then that creates an issue. So we want to make sure that we're able to produce an ordinance that will reveal implementation of a product that you would like to see here. So we're actually investigating that now. I don't know what the time frame is or parameter, or when you'd like us to move something forward, but that's what we're doing right now is the background.
Keep in mind too that whatever amendment Susan brings forward on behalf of her department will have to go to the Planning Commission first for their recommendation, and then come to council for consideration of adoption. So she'll have that advertisement period because she is amending the zoning ordinance, and then has to follow the Zoning Procedures Act for that. So I think if we just gave her a few more weeks, and then we could report back just as to the status of where we are. One of the things too that I want to be careful of, and I know Susan will be looking at this too, is that we don't become overreactive and limit ourselves to only fee simple when the market may change and we might have condominiums being financed again. And again, especially when we look at the overlay, some opportunities there. So perhaps there might be an opportunity for a combination thereof, or a choice, within the same body of that ordinance. So we've got that flexibility, so we're not creating new zoning classifications for every time a special project comes up. And remember too, we talked about a planned unit development zoning category, and I want Susan to be able to explore that, because that offers supreme opportunities, not only within the context of development sites within the city, but looking at our overlay, and then also looking at things that we want to do with the development authority, that there might be some opportunities there.
In my mind, I think there's sort of two levels. I mean, the PUD is sort of a Pandora's box that I don't know that we want to rush into, but providing the ability to do fee simple townhomes that yesterday were called condos, today they're called fee simple townhomes.
Right.
It is really what I think sort of the first order of business, because there are some existing projects and some coming online that I think you're currently reviewing that will want to have that designation because of current market conditions. But I agree with you 100% that let's not erase what's there. Let's leave that as an option, and let the applicant choose which direction they want to go.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm recommending, an option, so that she's got flexibility too when she's working with developers.
Exactly, and I guess you bring up a good point, and I think Councilman Gebbia has got one that I know he's trying to push forward, but it seems like not only will we have to approve the ordinance, but we'll also then have to approve a rezoning per se of a particular piece of property so that it meets that. So it's going to be a two-step process. It could take 60, 90, 120 days to work through just because of the required time periods.
That's another reason why I want to be really careful to look at what you do have to see if there's a way we can make it fit in your existing ordinance so that it doesn't add more time to the process.
But I would hope that we would, my goal is always to try to get away from having to get a variance for everything. Let's try to clean up our code or make it applicable to enough situations while still supporting solid development that we don't require everybody coming to the Zoning Board of Appeals to get something through. Maria, I'm not sure I know exactly what planned unit development is.
It is a zoning classification that allows for mixed-use development. And in some jurisdictions, it can be as small as a 2-acre tract, or it could be 2,500 acres. The general sense is that it allows for mixed use from commercial and residential, as well as an office component. So you create a community within itself, and many times these are marketed as a place where you live, work, and play. Amenities are available, and again, I'm talking about a larger scale project. A good example known well in the region is Windward up in Alpharetta. Very large, over 2,500 acres. But then I've seen them as small as 2 acres, and within that, usually it ends up being just one particular type of use, and it could be a residential development. But in that, you would require a percentage for open space, and then there would be some flexibility in the densities. And it's all pursuant to an approved master plan where it gets vetted by the planning director, recommendations are made, it goes before the planning commission for recommendation, and then to city council. So you have a zoning classification, the property may be already zoned that, or in this case, if we created a new one, it would be the development community coming forward and seeking a rezoning. But the requirement would be with that rezoning request would be that they would have to submit simultaneous to that a master plan, so that you are really focusing on all of the aspects. The area regulations such as setbacks, a percent of coverage, the density, even to the point in some jurisdictions, the type of building materials, all of that are included in this master plan. And it becomes, with those area regulations and design standards, a mini zoning ordinance in and of itself that is regulated and administered by the Community Development Department. So it does have a place, especially when you have, if you're encouraging this mixed-use development and you have large tracts of land, even to the point where you have some properties that may be too small but could benefit from this type of zoning. But the beauty of it is, it's not an express use. It has to come in with the master plan. Just because you have that zoning classification and you have that flexibility, nothing's approved until it's approved by mayor and council. So it really does afford the city to say, how does this development fit within the built environment and what is expected to be completed and built when everything is built out in that particular area. So I've seen great success with that zoning classification.
And I think your point about it being almost a mini zoning code is really sort of the key. It's a very conditioned zoning, and it's conditions on site plan and a number of other things. But by allowing that flexibility, you let the owner or the developer mix and match, but you also put some number of controls on it by the conditions that are applied to the specific approval. So
this goes much further than, didn't the CAP add a category of mixed use zoning?
Yes, they have
probably as a land use designation, and then they would allow certain zoning classifications to fit in that.
Yeah. So this is a much more detailed.
Very detailed. I mean, it's probably the closest thing to being a site plan without being a site plan.
It's detailed, but it allows flexibility in design.
Right.
So instead of a variance, it's flexibility in design, giving you the opportunity to cluster development, have open space, and just really control over the master plan.
The Brookhaven project would be a good example where it's got mixed use, it's got senior housing, it's got single family multi, it's got some retail in the front, and if you look at it, there's not the classic setbacks and separations that are required. If those were in different zonings, you'd have 50-foot buffers and all sorts of other things. They're sort of mixed, and when people buy into it, they know that they are going to be part of that mix that was pre-approved. So it allows flexibility, and oftentimes it suggests a higher density for trade-off of green space and those types of things. So it provides some flexibility from that standpoint also.
It's also, and one last thing, not to delay it, but as we are looking for redevelopment opportunities, it becomes a great incentive for developers to use that zoning classification to assemble properties and redevelop and get the benefit of increased density with a structured master plan that the planning department can work to be sure is implemented. So it's a nice offering when you're looking at underdeveloped or underserved areas that could have so much more potential.
But also because
certainly the direction we're going.
Yes.
Yeah. I think initially we've got and again we've sort of got two steps because the PUD is sort of a Pandora's box, and if not done with some thought, then it can open up some doors that.
Yeah. Well, fortunately,
we've got a lot of code.
Yeah, we do, and your community development director is experienced in that, so she's got
Was the DeKalb move towards the fee simple change an administrative decision?
It was, I believe it was done administratively.
Will that be part of your review to see if administrative options exist for us when
Sure.
situations arise?
Yes, sir.
That's the first point I'd like to bring up. Second is, I'd like to review with you a time agenda, what we're looking at here, following through on this, hopefully bringing it to completion.
Okay.
So we're talking about, if we had this reviewed for the next council meeting in about 2 weeks, what would be the time agenda thereafter for
Let's see.
necessary approval process?
We would have to take it to the planning commission in May.
And they meet on the first Monday of every, which would be May 1st.
We would have to advertise it.
For how long?
It has to be 15 days prior to and no more than 45 days, so.
It wouldn't make it till June at that rate.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so now we're talking June line. Continue.
And then in council thereafter.
Okay, so we're talking probably 4 to 5 council meetings from now.
Most likely, depending on if we can.
It would be the first or second meeting in June.
Right.
Then it would be approved. And again, that's because of the notice and
Notice
period.
requirements.
Right.
And
I'm really going to encourage you to look at that administrative option.
Okay.
there was a memo that was floating around, I don't know if you've seen a copy of it,
No.
that somebody put together that described how DeKalb did it. And I think you might, Gary Cornell may be able to provide that for you, because I don't know if he did it or somebody on his staff, but there was I remember seeing the process that they used. And again,
We could get that memo and share it with our city attorney. See
yeah,
how we could
and that's
move
it.
forward with that. And that might be a good stopgap measure while we're really assessing this other zoning classification and other opportunities that we could at least allow, that to move forward
Yeah.
in the interim.
Anything more on that? Okay. Let's move on to the Brookhaven Overlay District Moratorium Update. If you remember last week, last council meeting, we imposed a 90-day moratorium. Susan, you want to tell us where we are on that?
Well, we're actually in the process of reviewing all of that information, reviewing the zoning ordinance, underlying zoning ordinance, the overlay, the urban collage PowerPoint presentation. I've met with DeKalb County personnel and gone over all of their do's and don'ts, and these are issues and those are not issues, and here's what we think, and those types of things. I've reached out to the community. There was a council member who asked that I have a meeting with Mr. Joel Putterman and Mr. Michael Elliott. That meeting has been arranged. It's scheduled for Monday. If there are anyone else here has a group or a body that they would like to meet with, I'll be happy to do that. But I would like to close that opportunity for gathering input in the next 2 weeks, so that I can then concentrate on all the data that I've gathered, all the facts that I've gathered, to move on from there.
I'd suggest that you invite Jack Hondard and Bill Draper to that meeting also. They work together as the BPCA, and I think that they could, between the four of them, they can give you a pretty concise, both from the beginning, they were all involved in the beginning, and also they've been very involved from the community standpoint, so I think they can give you, plus they're all professionals. I mean, they all in some form or fashion are development people, so I think they'll give you that insight. And that's really probably that's probably the extent of what I think you would need from quote public comment standpoint.
Okay, and we have received some emails from some citizens who'd like to provide input, and I have indicated that we're available to do that, but I haven't heard back from them, but I have provided dates for them to come in and meet with me to hear their comments.
We putting this on our webpage for...
We have not put this on our webpage. We put the fact that we have a moratorium on our webpage and the fact that we're studying, but we have not invited
I would suggest that you try to get people to make written comments too, because I think by the time you try to schedule people for in-person visits, I think we're a little anxious to move this ahead. We don't want to extend the moratorium. In fact, if anything, I think we'd like to reduce it.
Yeah.
So let's try to be aware of your time, and I know you've already invested a fair amount of time in meeting with people, but maybe we could put it on the web that just invites comments to email. And quite frankly, if Bill or Jack can't make the Monday meeting, I'm sure they write a fine memo. So
yeah, but I agree with
And I did offer that. I did offer that option to provide written comments, and the preferred route for this particular meeting was to have a face-to-face meeting.
Yeah.
If we do put it on the webpage, though, I'd prefer there to be a cutoff date to receive the comments, so that we can, get the comments in.
We can talk tomorrow and put that out
Okay.
tomorrow.
Well, I mean, if you're looking for 2 weeks, which is what I think you said you wanted to cut it off, that would put it to the 23rd. That's the next council meeting. So probably that Friday, you'd want to have it be done, so you have that period of time to review before the next council meeting.
So I can give you a better update.
And that looks like the 19th of May.
April.
April, I'm sorry. Thank you.
One thing I will tell you that I am finding in reviewing the information is there appears to be text amendments that people may not know about. So I am finding extra layers of information that on its face are not there. So I'm investigating all of that as well.
Were those done by the county?
They were done by the county.
Okay.
Do we have any projects being held up right now because of this moratorium?
Those projects that were already in process, they've not been stopped. They're proceeding.
I'm not aware of anything
else
that's
came
come in that has been stopped. There have been some things that we've had to look at on a case-by-case basis that were perhaps tenant finishes that were already approved and things of that nature, but I'm not aware of anything on that.
Did you come across that text amendment concerning Oglethorpe?
There was one concerning Oglethorpe. I can't remember what the other one was, but yes, ma'am, I did see one.
Okay. So that was fairly recent. Okay.
So now we are, what, 2 weeks into this moratorium, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so 2 weeks. So on the 23rd will be a month, and that'll be after your cutoff time for input, at which time you'll be getting back to us with what suggestions, recommendations are from various sources.
Yes, sir.
I do think the opening it up to citizens is really important. For no other reason, like we learned during the first ZBA meeting, the biggest negative with, from a complaint standpoint from residents had to do with parking issues. So if there's other things that they're thinking of that we may not be aware of, or we may not have known the intensity of that interest or that concern that they have, it'd be a great opportunity to make sure we help them in.
But I think we also need to be careful to remind them that this is a technical review, not a conceptual review, and that their comments should be, if they talk about the fact that they don't want to see apartments on Dresden, that's conceptual.
Correct.
If they talk about they want 75, or they want more parking for retail, then yeah, that's something they can put in there. So I think we need to somehow, and maybe you come up with a stock email that goes out. But anyway, but just remind them that we're not opening this up for things that could change some of the issues that people, big picture kind of thing.
But I think if you're worried, how can we improve the overlay?
Maybe you can add that to the e-newsletter that you send out too.
I appreciate that comment, Mr. Iyer, because we will have a time that comes to us and will be available to really get into a little bit further and deeper review. When Susan launches the comprehensive plan, we'll have character areas, we'll have the community engaged. We're going to be looking not only at other places within the city, all parts of the city, but also the overlay, and that will be the opportunity to talk about, well, perhaps there might be some suggested changes. Should multifamily be located here versus over there, and she'll be able to take all of that in as she addresses those comments. Because we are on a time frame, and I know that there is concern not to hold up development, especially since we're seeing the economy turn now. We want to make ourselves available to the development community. Since you're wanting Susan to come back on the 23rd, I'd like to give her just a little bit more time in regards to when we cut off the comments, so that if she wants to prepare a report or send any material out to you that is up to date and at the close of the comment period, I'd really like the comments closed at the end of business on Wednesday the 17th, and for this reason, because packets are finalized and prepared by the city clerk, and then she's getting them all out. So I'd like to be able to give Susan that opportunity to finish up her cover report that you all would get if in the event she is going to send out a memo that includes bullet points of suggested technical changes. And I appreciate the use of the word technical, because that's really all that this is about. So if you're in agreement to that, Megan could make that announcement through the website that it would be close of business on the 17th, and then she's got Susan Thursday to get any additional information back to our city clerk, if you're good with that.
you saying April 17th?
Yeah, did I say May?
No,
Oh,
I just wanted to
okay.
clarify.
Yes, April 17th, so that's because your packets are worked on the 18th, Thursday.
If you want, we can put out separate notice through our e-newsletter mailing list tomorrow that just focuses
Yeah,
on
that'd be
this,
great.
as
Yeah.
well as promote it through our
Because otherwise,
social media.
it's really just a week.
Right, I know.
And-
But,
That-
but I would caution that we make sure that it's written to be, that it emphasizes that it is for technical corrections.
Suggested technical
Yes,
changes.
yes. So
And-
that-
And just I want to add too that,
And I'm sorry, and if you want to add what Marie mentioned, well, I'm not even sure we want to get into that, but, we'll look later at the comp plan and we'll get into the, big picture kind of stuff. But right now, we just need to really focus on making things that the changes that need to be made to make it easier to interpret what's there.
and if they need to be made.
Exactly.
So the point is clarity of interpretation, ability to implement is
Yes.
what, do we have what's there, what is needed to appropriately implement it? That's one thing. And another thing is, should it be changed? But that's for later.
Yeah.
So,
Okay?
Okay, let's talk about streetlight assessments. Marie, you want to tell us about
Yes.
that?
I'm happy to report that we are nearing the point that we're going to be coming back to you very soon with an ordinance and an overall plan. Richard has been working on the streetlight assessment, and we, of course, know that the residential community has been assessed through DeKalb County on streetlights, and Richard has a chart, you want to pass that out to them, please, that shows the area, the landmass of the city, and by percentage, how much residential, commercial, industrial, and exempt properties are included in the streetlight assessment. Our city attorney challenged us when we were working on this, because I did want, as you all know, to expand it to include our commercial base. And the challenge was, well, we need to be sure there's some commercial property out there that's contributing prior to Brookhaven startup. And I was happy to report to them through Richard that he did find some. So we do have those commercial properties that are already part of this. So our plan is to notify the county that we will be taking over the streetlight assessment program. They already know it, but we're going to get into a more formal directive with them, and we'll be working with our city attorney on that. But I'm going to let Richard go over his findings and where we are. But the overall plan would be to bring this back to you in the first meeting in May with an ordinance. And of course, that's with the timing with our city attorney to be sure we can get that ordinance prepared. But we will have to have one. DeKalb will be collecting those assessments for us. But that is the plan.
Yeah, and like Marie said on this chart here, it shows what the basis of the chart, we kind of looked at both by area and number of parcels. So if you see on the residential, by area, about 75, 76% of the residential parcels within the city by area pay the streetlight fee. If you look at it by number of parcels, it's only about 60%. This is primarily with the residential due to condos and townhomes, because they are included in the parcel count. They don't pay streetlight fees, so that kind of skewed. That's why we did it both by area and by number of parcels, so that to get an idea of. So it's really, to us, it's more like 75% of the residentially parcels with our residentials within the city are paying streetlight fees.
Obviously, they've got private streetlights
Yes.
internal, but are they paying as an association front footage for the public right-of-way?
It varies. If there's I guess the common area of the condo fronts a road that is in a residential streetlight district, yes, they are supposed to be. Not all of those have been captured. This is our first cut of the data that we've gotten from DeKalb County. In going through, I'm probably really we're going through it parcel by parcel pretty much. And we're maybe about 10 or 15% in, and I've found significant number of parcels that are supposed to have been billed that haven't been, that I'm adding back in. And some of those are the common areas for townhomes and condos. Some of them are occasional commercial, some of them are residential lots. The typical case with a residential lot is, in Brookhaven, you have a lot of lots, older lots that were subdivided. When that was subdivided, DeKalb never went back and got the new lot. They maybe billing the old lot, but they never went back and charged the new lot for the streetlight fee that they were supposed to. So I'm finding quite a bit of that in all areas of the city, not just the commercial areas, or not just in townhome areas. And you know, it's actually for the good, because we're actually finding more money in streetlight fees that we're supposed to be collecting without adding any new this is not adding any and extending any of the districts. This is just within the existing districts. As we said with the commercial, you can see that by land area, by parcel, about 25% of the commercial properties within the city are paying a streetlight fee. These are commercial properties that are on, or they have a commercial designation. They're properties that are on roads that have streetlight districts. For example, Corporate Boulevard out here is a streetlight district. So all the properties that front along Corporate Boulevard are paying a streetlight fee. Briarwood Road is another one. There are several roads that have a mix of both commercial and residential. There are parts of Johnson's Ferry and Ashford Dunwoody, parts of North Druid Hills that fall into streetlight districts that have both commercial and residential parcels on them. The main areas where the commercial is not paying are on Buford Highway, Peachtree Road, Claremont Road. Those roads, they have streetlights. The city is being billed for them, but they're not designated as streetlight districts, so a lot of the parcels on those roads don't pay any streetlight fee.
And that's mostly because of the default of DeKalb to enforce, or do it?
No, it's the way DeKalb's program ran. DeKalb had what they call a residential streetlight program. So on roads like Peachtree and Buford Highway and North Druid, the southern part of North Druid Hills, they never, even though they would put streetlights in, they didn't charge. They considered that for the greater community, I guess, or for the county as a whole, because they were arterials, so they never charged a fee to the properties that fronted along those roads. They always paid it. In their case, they paid it out of their general fund for those lights.
Is there a flat commercial fee that's charged?
No, the fee that's charged is based on the actual district, streetlight district that the property is in. The way DeKalb has it divided, there's about, I think, 130, 140 separate streetlight districts within Brookhaven. It could be as simple as a single street, a six-home cul-de-sac could be a streetlight district, or I know around Ashford Park, just about all those streets around Ashford Park Elementary are one big district, so it varies in size from, you know, 6 homes to hundreds of homes. Each streetlight district has its own rate per frontage foot, and it varies. The lowest rate is 40 cents per frontage foot, and there's, for some of the newer developments that have underground power with the more fancier lights, they may be paying as much as 90 or 95 cents per frontage foot is the highest I've seen so far in Brookhaven. But I have seen them over $1 even in some of the newer neighborhoods. So
does it make sense to make them consistent, or is there, I mean, were they just not updated, or is there truly less being charged for, I mean, what's the Georgia Power bill?
It's what the way DeKalb did it, they treated each district as kind of its own entity, and so the theory was that the collections within that streetlight district pay for the streetlights within that district. So if you look at the various types of streetlights out there, what they call the clamshell lights that are on the power poles, those are the least expensive lights for both a power and a maintenance standpoint. You know, if you have those in your street, you're more likely paying the 40 cents per foot, especially in the neighborhoods that have been long established. They established their first districts back in the 1950s. The new neighborhoods that are in the redeveloped neighborhoods that have been built probably within the last 10 or 15 years, they tend to have underground power. They have pole-mounted street lights that are a lot more costly to maintain, a lot more, not necessarily more on the power side, but costly on the maintenance side. Those newer developments are the ones that tend to pay the higher rate per foot. But the way they have it set up, that if it's like I said, that 6-home cul-de-sac that has street lights on it, what they collect from those 6 homes are supposed to cover the cost of the lights within that district. The way the program is now, what we've been told, although we're still doing our analysis, at least within the residential zones, DeKalb is collecting or has been collecting more than the cost of the lights within the districts. They're creating a little bit of a surplus from it. And at least in the first year, we're expecting to get a surplus from at least the residential portions.
But they're using it to offset the commercial, the
highway and intersection lighting. I don't know how they do it from a budget standpoint with how they treat the income and the of the cost, but yes, the net is when you take the net of it is, yeah, they're using some of that to offset the cost of the highway.
Now, do they get a bill for each streetlight district, or do they want one bill? I'm
It's,
curious. I mean, that seems like it's administrative.
there is many bills, and actually I have a meeting with Georgia Power tomorrow to start going through that process of how many bills. What we've done, what we'll do is, they get one bill, I think, that covers Metro North, and it has separate lines on there for, I guess, I don't know if it's by street or by district.
Okay.
What we'll be working with Georgia Power to transfer that billing to us, and also to consolidate some of that billing so we have one bill we pay per month. It more than likely comes in multiple bills right now.
One of the things that we're now able to do, because just in the last less than 10 days, we finally got the parcel maps from the county. So that, yes, and that's a big thing, because that helps us with GIS. I mean, community development is excited, Public Works is excited, you know, finance is extremely happy about that, because now we have an idea of what the digest is. But the goal here is, it's multifolded, but primarily, you know, we want to be able to take over the streetlight assessment district. We want to make it fit more fair and equitable so that we don't have the residential community carrying the commercial. But I think we have to take small steps first, and what I foresee us doing and what we'll be recommending to you is to accept it as it is, and then work with the commercial properties, because one of the findings that Richard discovered was that there is a single parcel fronting on Beaufort Highway that has its own streetlight assessment district, one parcel.
We don't know why.
And we don't know why, and we're happy about it.
No, there are parcels on Peachtree and Beaufort that pay streetlight assessment, but most of those it's the side road that they also abut or a streetlight district, and they just happen, they're not paying for their Beaufort Highway frontage, they're paying for their Briarwood Road or Corporate Boulevard frontage. But there are, I found, I think, a handful of parcels on Beaufort Highway that they don't have any side road frontage, and yet DeKalb was charging a streetlight fee. We're trying to ascertain why from the county to see if there was a legitimate reason or if it was just oversight.
So at the end of the day, we hope that it's basically going to be revenue neutral, and any savings that we can afford the residential, we'll work in that direction.
Yeah, that is the goal. But if there is, you know, an overage collected, we would like to take a look at those funds and be able to you know, put them back into the community, whether it's through beautification or upgrades on some of the areas that may be dark in between where we already have an existing streetlight assessment district, and you know, further illuminate the area. So we want to look at that. I think for now, you know, we want to leave the formula as it is until we can better understand. And then another goal right now, and we don't know what that answer is, but once Richard starts having these meetings with Georgia Power and we understand the sense of the volume of energy that's being used, you know, are there opportunities for us to go in there and be able to capture the volume of energy used and get some discounts, as any commercial development would do. So if that's available, we'd like to spread that cost savings, you know, across the community, and all the while taking a look at the remaining commercial districts that are not part of this and bring them up to standard with everybody else. Because I think if we can, the theory is if we can bring everybody else up to a level playing field, it lowers the price for everybody. And so that's the goal, but that's going to be, you know, a multi-step process. The first is notify the county, which we have informally, but formally through our attorney's office, that we're going to take it over. We're going to accept the assessment formulas as they are, but move towards a more equitable standard, and probably by 2014 we'll have that level playing field, and because we won't be able to change that midstream since the county's already getting ready to assess for this tax year.
Are you aware of any municipalities that have a standard fee citywide, or I know some of the rural electric corp may do that. I mean, are there
Yeah, there are
cities
some cities that do have a streetlight assessment, period, flat across the board, everybody pays, and it's to cover the energy costs.
and do
Is
they
it standard between residential and commercial, or is it just two levels there?
In one particular city that I'm aware of, there was no differentiation made. It was just a flat fee, because it was just the city's goal was to cover the energy cost, period. Whatever the cost was, it was spread out through the digest in that way. But then you have developments that want to pay their own costs, because they assess that back to the owners, whether it's an industrial park or even a residential condominium development.
Or the areas where they want to put in a large number of lights.
Correct.
As opposed to places that are kind of dark.
Exactly, yeah. And there's a standard, and from the engineering side of, the number of lights, the footlight of the candles, and what is the illumination factor, and should they be 50 feet apart or 100 feet apart. And then when you do have a development that says, well, we want the overhead lights, but we also want pedestrian level lights, and they'll come in between. Correct, and so you get into all sorts of costs there.
Yeah, I mean, but they always have that option to supplement it and charge that as an operating cost to the tenant,
Right.
But if there's a city fee, then that's also.
Right, and that's why it's important he's working with Georgia Power, because you have people that will call Georgia Power up, or Georgia Power themselves, because I've known this in other cities. They will drive the streets at night and see where the dark spots are and make plans to put those lights up, and the bill goes to the city. So we need to be able to understand that.
I've had a couple of questions from residents who want more streetlights. Where do I direct them?
You can direct them to either myself or Jada. Either one of us can answer those. Jada is probably the better one to initiate some of that specifics. But if it's a street that's in an existing streetlight district, it's relatively easy to add the lights, because we can contact Georgia Power, let them evaluate the situation, and we can just add that light in. It adjusts what we're going to pay, but usually those are a minor enough cost. You're talking per light, you're talking, I think it's on the order of maybe $100 per year for a standard pole-mounted light is what the cost to the city would be. If it's a street that doesn't have street lights, we have to go through a more formal petition process and get, I think it's 51% of the residents, the frontage foot of that street. It's 51% by frontage feet. To agree to the petition, and then we can bring it to council to establish that streetlight district. Also working with Georgia Power to develop how many lights it's going to be, and that way that's how you develop the formula for how much the per foot cost is going to be for that street.
Do we want to open this up for comments from residents to see if they think that they're in need of lighting in their community?
I think we need to take step one first.
I think step one is
let's adopt the
getting.
district first. Like sort of the 130 districts.
Within individual
Different fees too.
Let's say within individual streets, if there is an individual street that desires lights, I mean, they can come to us and we can initiate and walk them through what the petition process would be for that street. And we can certainly add individual streets. Now, as far as doing, like Marie had said, a citywide plan or a beautification plan, that's something we would need to, that's more of a long-term process.
Can you address the exempt and other?
What the exempt is, and this is going by the file that DeKalb sent us and what I'm finding. The exempt properties, what we're finding is a lot of them is churches, but it's also DeKalb County-owned properties, like the parks and the schools. In talking with Lenny, and with Marie, a lot of those properties we feel, because the street light is a fee, it's not a tax, a lot of those churches and community organization properties that are maybe property tax exempt are not necessarily street light fee exempt. So this is based on the initial cut of what DeKalb had sent us. We expect, as I go through, that if there is a property that's in a streetlight district, that we're going to add that fee into theirs this year. Those are some of the properties we're working on going through and adding to that. The other, what I found with other, because there was some coding in there. They're not really by zoning code, they're kind of, it's a different property code that DeKalb uses. Really the two things that fell in there were utility-owned properties, which properties owned by Georgia Power. And yes, Georgia Power actually is paying streetlight fees for some of the properties that they own that are in streetlight districts. So Georgia Power, they are paying. And there's a few Georgia Power properties that aren't that we're going to be capturing as well, but they are paying a streetlight fee. Some of the others are, there was some hospital properties, I guess, the 8 properties, which they're not going to be because they're not in any streetlight district. I think they were just parcels that showed up as part of St. Joe's. And there's some, I'm trying to think of what other those I think were the 2 classifications, were utility and basically it's any parcel that didn't have a designation of the other 4 things.
All right, let's move on to stormwater utility update.
Just like the streetlight assessment, we now have parcel ID maps, so that is extremely helpful for us to identify the parcels and also the impervious surface for those properties. Because we are coming up on the timeline with DeKalb to sort of close the door on what belongs to them and what belongs to the city for purposes of collection of assessments and fees, the stormwater utility also rides on the tax bill. So our plan is to meet with the county in the next week or week and a half to give them formal notice that we plan to take over the stormwater utility program. And what we're planning to do is we're just going to recommend to you to adopt their fee structure. We will have to, as a result of that, we're going to come back to you within the next few months for you to consider the adoption of a stormwater utility plan or a stormwater plan. The good news is DeKalb County has told me that they will share with us the inventory of all the assets and the conditions of those assets. So Richard's department will then take that information and then create the narrative that goes around that information and then develop a capital improvement program for long range as to what we want to address, as well as the short range on where we're going to be reactive when there's a problem, when we have a rain event. A resident may call in and say, my backyard never flooded before and it's flooded, so they'll go out and check the storm sewer or whatever might have caused that to occur. So a couple of steps that we're going to be going through. One, we'll be notifying the county within the next couple of weeks so that they are aware that the collection that they'll be making through the tax bill, we expect to come to the city, which will be by the end of the year. We do expect that with that notice, that they will tell us that they have been doing all sorts of repair work. So we will ask them to give us an accounting of that and its location. Richard's department has also been doing that because he's been called by the citizens, so he's been keeping an accounting of that as well as to what really truly is stormwater utility repair and maintenance. So we think that there will be a truing up, if you will, of what the county has said that they paid and what we have been incurring as cost to repair. Once we know what that number is, minus what is left of the collection, then that will be the funds that we will be using. Our plan is to fully take over and operate in January 2014 a stormwater utility program. So that is the plan. We'll be then entering that program in 2014 with funds collected in 2013. So we'll have some funds for Richard's department to be able to respond to problems, complaints, or concerns from the citizenry as he addresses his short-term program, which is a reactionary short-term, but also then be able to reserve funds for his long-term projects, whereby he may want to improve the storm sewer in a particular area, or in working with community development when projects come in, if the piping needs to be enlarged to capture a larger area. So 2014 we'll be able to move forward. Right now we notify the county. We'll be coming back to you in the next month with an ordinance for stormwater utility and its collection with a plan that will follow through with Richard doing the work probably over the next couple of months, but we will accept the county's plan as an interim basis along with an ordinance. The fee structure is going to be what DeKalb County is now collecting, because that's what they're collecting for this tax year. We'll look at that again for 2014. Richard will, and he'll make that recommendation to me. Do we stay the course? Does it become lower? Or do we just leave it alone for right now?
Have they approved there was talk about it, right?
Yeah, we think they have. Richard was going to verify that.
I haven't verified it yet.
It was on so many agendas
Yeah.
and then deferred.
Was today county commission? It was on an
Yes,
agenda.
it's been on several.
Yes,
It's been on several, I don't know.
There's been public meetings, and they're basically going from 4 to 5, but.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. And we want to be able to capture what the county, because we want to take their work that they've identified that there needs to be an adjustment on those fees to be able to respond to all of the work, and especially the long-range improvements.
So these fees come on our property tax bill, right? Just like this,
It's a fee, it's not, yes, correct.
Okay, so in both the street light and the stormwater fees, when we take over these programs, do they send us the fees they've collected for all of 2013, or is it prorated?
No, it'll be for 2013 minus, once we formally notify them in the next 10 days that we're going to take it over. I'm expecting in that very meeting, they're going to say, this is what we've done.
Okay.
So we're going to take that. And then Richard's going to say, but oh, this is what we've done. And so they put that back in, and then we'll be a net.
We may need to check with Bill on it too, because the fee is going to be a city of Brookhaven fee.
Yes.
It may come to us, and the DeKalb County may bill us.
Correct.
It'd probably be, the fees, I think, will all come to us, but DeKalb may bill us for what they say they charged.
Right, and we're going to have to get into an agreement, because they're going to have to be the collector for us anyway.
Right.
So we'll have to enter into that, and then Ms. Klein's going to be involved in that, because that's finance department to finance department as they do the billing, and she gets the collection of that. And then that amount of money is protected, because it has to remain with the stormwater utility. So we're looking at another account that's going to have to be set up that Richard will draw from as he makes improvements and repairs.
And you said that we were going to, that they were going to give us their most current assessments. I know when Dunwoody took over the stormwater system, that they had to send the cameras down through every stormwater sewer. Has that already been done in the CAB?
Yes.
Or do we have a lot of that to do once we...
No, we don't have a lot of that to do. When Dunwoody took over, DeKalb had not done any inventory in the Dunwoody area. The benefit of us 4 years later is that DeKalb County has completed the complete inventory within the Brookhaven area. They've actually completed the whole county, but including what's now the city of Brookhaven. It doesn't have cameras. They did not do camera runs of all the pipes, but what they do is they have an inventory of all the structures, a size and condition assessment of all the pipes, photographs of such, enough data that we can take it and determine what the needs are, both short-term and long-term, for the system, for the age of the pipes, the condition of the pipes, to be able to develop a long-term capital improvement plan for the stormwater system.
And that's the majority of the stormwater plan, and thankfully they've done that. So what remains for Public Works now is to write the narrative around it. And I suspect that when Richard gets into some major repairs, he's going to have to run a camera down some of these pipes just to see. Unfortunately, the utility program pays for that, so we'll be able to have the funds to cover that.
Remind me, the GIS aerial that we purchased, does that include enough information that you could go back and confirm or reconfirm the impervious areas on particularly some of the commercial lots? Or?
It should, at least roughly this year. One of the benefits will, on a lot of the commercial lots, the data we've gotten from DeKalb is we know what DeKalb has charged those commercial lots in the past for impervious area. At least as a first run, we'll probably, depending on timing of getting everything done by early to mid-May to be able to get on the tax bills, we may just go with what they have, but we'll do some spot confirmations. But as far as when we go into really next year's cycle, by 2014 billing cycle, we'll be able to reconfirm using the more current imagery.
Let's hear an update on the intergovernmental agreements.
We're bringing that over to the attorney, please.
Yeah, what we mentioned on is we've got a number of them that are sitting here, and there's actually, I believe, one other that's on the full council meeting agenda for tonight. I'll talk about the 4 that are right here, right now. We're in the process of talking to the county on all 4 of these. We're in the process of finalizing, and I know that 2 of the ones that we're really focusing on are kind of police and 911. And what I can say is we are down to some final negotiations on those, getting just setting all the terms, what we can do with that. And some of the things that we're really nailing down right now is a lot of the fee schedule, the payment timelines, and kind of what it's tied to, how it's paid, when we're paid to right now. And that's a lot of details that we really don't want to mess up, especially with the payments. And so I mean that's what we're focused on right now with those IGAs. And as soon as they are ready, that both sides, both the county and the city, both us, we're ready with them, we'll be able to present them to council.
So are we not going to pass this tonight on the police?
Not the police, no. We're still in the final, talking about the final terms about a lot of the payment stuff. And how and kind of what it's tied to and when the payments would be due, how much, what percentages and things. So again, we've got the basics there. It's just finalizing the details of how it all gets done.
Okay, so does that mean that we should table on the regular agenda K5?
That's what I would do, yes, ma'am.
Do you feel like we're close then?
We are. And we really are making progress. And we're hoping to be done, we say anytime, but again, it's anytime we've got to change, it's got to be checked by multiple people on both sides.
How do we check? There's been discussions that DeKalb County is reallocating some resources out of Brookhaven South. How do we check to see that what sort of check and balance do we have to know that I don't want to say that we're not getting what we're paying for, but how we know that the resources are being allocated as appropriated in the intergovernmental agreement?
Let me answer that.
Yeah.
Because I have quite a history of that. I think the reality of this situation is that you have to believe that the police are going to do the best job that they possibly can do.
I have no doubt that
the enforceability of having certain persons located within the city is not within our purview. The county's position has been and will continue to be that they are a singular police department for the entire area. And while they have needs that they have here, when there's a need for allocation because of some accident on the expressway or some detail that's going on, it has some exigency, that they will redeploy forces. Their argument would also be to us that when there is something major going on Buford Highway, that they redeploy forces that are not within the jurisdiction for us also. So this is part of the pain of separation, and we just try to keep encouragement and keep working together and know that the police on the street, but all they want to do is defend and serve. So I just don't think that you're going to really get too far in peeling that onion down, and just continue to encourage the police to do everything that they're doing to help us.
You, during your IGA conversations, it's got to be fairly apparent that they've got to be working on the breakdown for North Precinct. You can't keep it fully staffed right up to the very end. So are they giving you abreast as far as what they plan to do as far as decommission of that?
I would say to you that their answer to us would be they intend to keep that, and they intend to put every person on the street that they promised to put on the street. I don't think that we'll have any, we won't have that.
Here's the good news on being able to, and Bill is right with everything he's saying. Come Monday, your new chief of police arrives, and he has been busy already from late last week to even today hiring his command staff. So we're going to now have a police officer talking to his complimenting his colleagues. And, I think that, we'll be able to get more information on some of the questions that you're asking. But until there is a full handoff of the baton, we have what we have. We have a promise from them they'll do the best job they can. But now we'll be able to have our own chief who speaks their language communicating with them to do come Monday.
I thought we had talked at one time about possibly having a contact point or a liaison or some regular reporting to the city. Did that not develop? Is that...
Well, we have worked on that. We've been told that we would have the major that is assigned out of the North Precinct to come to our meetings, and even to the night that we were expecting to adopt our IGA several weeks ago, where we thought the chief was going to arrive, but we understand that she was called out on another matter and could not attend. So we've made every effort to invite them to be a part of our meetings and be available to answer any of your questions. And we'll be able to close that gap very quickly with Gary's arrival Monday.
Yeah, I think that's the key is when he comes on board, we've got somebody that's designated.
Speaks to speak.
Yeah. And it's designated for that role rather than several people. I mean, it's the one-on-one contact rather than
yeah.
people.
And there's been great effort made, through the attorney's office, through my office, and we get the, yes, we'll do it, and here's your contact, and
Well, I thought I read that Major Ellison had already moved over to the central.
well, that's what I heard.
That's effective today.
Yeah.
I've had several people ask me when we transition over if we'll get our pro rata share of police cars or guns or whatever. I said, no, it doesn't work that way. And I'm not sure we want to make
Yeah, that's right. Well, your new chief is already specking out the cars and lining them up to purchase. He has been very busy.
And do I understand that we're getting quite a few applicants for officers?
Absolutely. Rick Stone has been covered up with interviews. I understand that an offer was to be made to the deputy chief today, a sergeant who's going to be the public information officer. So they are being lined up. Mr. Stone has been very busy doing the pre-interviews for the chief, and the chief has been closing the interviews.
That's exciting.
It is.
Yeah, very exciting.
Yes.
Okay. Anything new on Parks and Rec? Well, actually, 911.
Yeah, we're still in negotiations with them.
Does the police chief get involved in any of this after coming on board on Monday? I mean, for example, on 911, I know he expressed with me his concern to make sure that frequencies, for example, are all in sync between Dunwoody, Sandy Springs, and or DeKalb, and I think right now that may not be the case.
That'll be all part of his purview.
When he assumes the baton change.
That'll be part of his purview as he sets up his system.
Yes.
They'll be part and parcel of what he's going to do. As part of what he has to do is he has to obtain all his radios, and he'll work with the county and work with the 911 system, and work with Dunwoody and the others on how they work on how they get the radios. That's part of what he does.
So thank goodness he's coming on board.
Yes. Timing is just perfect right now. It couldn't be any better.
IGA on Parks and Rec.
We have an understanding of what that fee should be. We have not reached an understanding on how the payment will occur. We thought we had an understanding of how we were going to pay that over a 2-year period, and I was just recently informed that that was no longer available, so I'm back into working on that. And I should have something for you by the next work session. The county has issued contracts to the volunteer associations to run the ball programs, softball, baseball, so they've committed the parks. I do know that they were lining up, getting ready to get the pools open and to get the summer camp program moving along. We're just trying to get back to where we all understood how we were going to pay for that.
I was surprised but pleased to see that they're resurfacing courts at Brookhaven.
Yes.
Because I thought they were out of money, but I guess somebody found some money. That's good. Community development.
Do you want to talk about that, or do you want me to?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
That's
Okay.
That's
Okay.
a nice feather.
The city attorney's office is helping me develop the intergovernmental agreement between the community development department of the county and the city, whereby we are going to get some assistance through the block grant program. They have committed $500,000 to us to assist us in the rehab and renovation of the grounds of our multifamily projects. Right now, we're working on that intergovernmental agreement. That will then be through the lawyers, and that will be presented to the county. In the meantime, Susan and I have been working together on how we're going to inspect those apartment complexes, and I know you all had a concern about the probability that it could take 5 years with the current staff and all the other obligations that the Community Development Department has. We have received a proposal, and we're working through that now through the attorney's office on creating a contract, but through that proposal and with that group, and it is a group that you awarded a contract to, and now we're developing the task order, but the 72 complexes will be able to be not only inspected within an 18-month period, so we'll have one complex a week that will be inspected, with a follow-up through that team with the landlord/owner to come up with the correction or remedy program, and again with that vendor monitoring the remedy. So first part will be conducting the inspections over an 18-month period, one inspection per week per complex. The follow-up of that inspection for the remedy, creating the plan for improvements, and inspecting those improvements to be sure that they are all in place. So we're very excited about that. We have found the funds to pay for that. And so that's part one. The most important part before we launch that, Ms. Cannon will have a series of forums, open houses, that she's going to hold for the, first of all, the landlords and /owners, so that they understand what is going to be expected. Tonight on your council agenda is Chapter 18, the multifamily inspection ordinance, whereby it's called out for the interior inspections. And you all remember at your last work session, you said that you wanted 30% to be done instead of 20%. So, excuse me, not 30, but a third, and a third, so that we could have all of the units inspected by a third-party inspector over a period of 3 years. And then the provision on how we give notice to the apartment community that we will be doing the exterior inspection. And I want to thank Mr. Iyer. I know that we have spent quite a long time, but I think we have finally gotten the ordinance where we need it. And in the body of the ordinance, we have included the inspection list and the standard for which we expect inspections to be conducted for the interior units. For the exterior, we are not including the policy in which we will conduct those inspections. However, Ms. Cannon's department will create the inspection list, and they will develop the standard operating procedures on how they will conduct themselves and approach the property, and how they will prepare and conduct those inspections and the follow-up, and even the contact with the landlord initially. So all of that is being put into place. That will be a separate document. When her department, through this inspection team, contacts the landlord, they will come with a packet. And that packet will include the ordinance and the criteria for the inspections, what we're going to be looking for, how the landlord must give notice to his residents, and how we will give notice to them. We have a 72-hour notice provision in the ordinance that we will make contact with them. I think it's a very thorough ordinance. It gives us a clear directive on how we approach, but it also gives a clear directive on what we expect for the interior inspections, which is contained in the body of the ordinance. And the reason for that is, and we went back and forth on that, is because it's a third-party inspector that's conducting that inspection. So we want to be sure that we give as much constructive notice as possible. So the best place to put that is into the body of the ordinance. The exterior, we control that inspection, so we will have that separate, because again, if there's any changes that Ms. Cannon needs to make to better improve the process, she has the ability administratively to do that. So she'll schedule, after we have the, hopefully the adoption this evening for Chapter 18, schedule an information session with the landlords and or owners. Second, she will also have an open house for all the tenants, and we'll have a bilingual person there so we can be sure that that information is being communicated, because we want the community residents to understand, you know, what's going on. So we want them to understand what the interior inspection requirements are and what the exterior inspection requirements are. The plan is that Susan will have at both of those open houses her team, her inspection team, that will be available to answer any questions and to talk about how they're going to be approaching this. I'm very excited that we'll be able to do this over an 18-month period. I'm also extremely appreciative of Luz Barreros, the Deputy Chief Operating Officer for Development for DeKalb County, that she opened up the Community Development Block Grant funds to us so that we would now have a means in which to work with our apartment owners to expand that $500,000 in the form of grants to work hand in hand. We want the owners to have some skin in the game, so we want to see a match program on that, and so that they can rectify and remedy any outstanding issues of compliance, so that they can move those along sooner and quicker for the good of the residents who live in those communities. So this IGA is an agreement with the county through the community development departments that funds will be made available for the purpose of the repair and renovation of exterior improvements. And that can be the potholes, or that could be the unsafe conditions of broken glass in windows, or live wires or cables that are running through the complex, or even the swing sets that are there.
Or even paint carpet.
Correct,
yeah,
right. So this is a great partnership. Ms. Barreros was very accommodating. We've got a project that they need, and these funds are available to us in 2013. So very excited about the agreement that we have reached verbally, and I hope our attorneys would say that's a contract. I'm counting on it as one. And once we can get the IGA, and in fact, we first talked about a contract, and in order to speed it up, we said we would do, both of us, Luz and myself, said, let's go the route of an IGA, because it is for a specific purpose over a specific period of time. We are hoping that that fund will grow to a larger amount, and once we have that IGA ready, we do want to invite the county to come to the meeting before the council so that we have a formal presentation. But I know that the Community Development Department for the city is very excited, because it gives us a means in which to assist in the correction of deficiencies to create a better quality of life for people that live in our multifamily developments here in the city.
So the $500,000 is for the inspections and repair?
No, just the repair. The inspections, we have found funds to be able to provide for that. And the funds that we're receiving from the county go exclusively to and only for the improvements to bring the exterior of these apartment complexes up to code.
Just exterior, or can be used on interior?
Not for this first round. We're working with them on the next phase of funds.
I like that. I'm curious, what is that a stipulation of their funding, or?
No, well, it's their availability of funds.
Okay.
These are 2013 funds, and they needed a project, and we had one for them.
Okay.
There are other funds that will be made available after October that we'll be looking at. And I might add, too, just to put a footnote here, some of these dollars are caught in the sequester. But these funds, this first $500,000 is not, and that's what's available right now to us.
And remind me, Community Development Block Grant money is specifically designed for distressed or low-income areas?
It can be, but it's also available for economic development, infrastructure improvement, senior citizens programming and activities. You could build a senior citizen center with it. You can build a park with it. You can rehab homes. You can weatherize them. Certainly, the purpose of it is for low and moderate income, but there are opportunities beyond that many communities have been able to utilize in combination, looking at workforce housing such as we are, especially in the Beaufort Highway corridor, because that's where we want to prioritize this funding. We want to be able to connect workforce housing to the Beaufort Highway Employment District and also to our Cross Keys community, so that we have sound housing and people living close to where they could work and go to school.
Well, kudos to our city manager for going to DeKalb County and finding this money and getting that. I applaud you. It's a testament to your knowledge and creativity and persuasiveness and good ideas.
Good
Thank
ideas.
you. Thank you very much. And thanks to Luz Barreros for being open to the idea.
We'll have enough to thank her when she comes.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm very happy and excited for Susan to be able to hand this project off to her.
So one of the other things,
good hands.
just to clarify too, as we discussed, to make sure that we maximize this money, it was going to be a matching. We wanted to have skin in the game for those that participated. So there'll be a performance criteria upon which monies will then be divvied out. So that money will go a lot further than just $500,000, and we intend to maximize that.
Right, and we hope that there will be, pursuant to our performance, that there will be more funds available, because there's certainly the need.
Yeah, this is a phenomenal opportunity for us here in Brookhaven. We're really appreciative for it.
Okay. The charter amendment regarding term limits. I thought we had already passed this.
It's passed.
Okay.
This House Bill 642, it went on April the 4th to the governor. It's waiting his signature. So the only term limit that it was effective was it further defined that the mayor was term limited to 2 full terms, and a partial term did not count towards that, or a 3-year term on the initial didn't go towards that.
So once the governor signs this, we're good to go.
We're good to go.
And we've already done whatever we have to do at our end.
We didn't have to do anything since this is a
Charter
amendment from the legislature rather than a home rule charter amendment.
Okay, well, that was easy. Let's look at the regular agenda items real quick. We've actually already talked about some of them. All right, so we're going to have the second read under item K, old business. We'll have the second read of the Development Authority ordinance.
Once that is approved this evening, I'll be able to contact the Department of Community Affairs, because we do have to register the authority with them. And then I'll be reaching out to the appointed members, because they will have to receive some training. The Department of Community Affairs provides that training for them, so that they will be available and ready to go when opportunities present themselves.
Do we have projects lined up for them to review? Is there anything on the docket?
There is one that I'm hopeful that they can, and I'm waiting for the review by the city attorney, but we're exploring the idea of the Development Authority being the tenant, or actually we would be the tenant to their lease for a new city hall. So that is a possibility, so we're looking at that. I think that would be their first project.
So then we're going to actually, I know we introduced many of them last council meeting, but we're going to actually swear in the ones who were able to show up tonight.
Correct. Right.
Do you know how many are showing?
2, 3, not many. They're all out of town for the spring break.
Sure, understand.
I know one was not available, or not going to be available in a minute. We replaced Todd Lantier for,
yes,
because of conflict of interest.
I sent you an email on that, yeah.
I have the bios to give out to.
Failed to collect it and read it. And who would that be?
So we have a new appointee that Joe has recommended, and we'll just tell everybody. It's Bruce Whitmer, an attorney.
Bruce Whitmer is a resident of District 1, Montgomery School. He is a 1971 graduate of Emory Law School, and he is a former captain in the 101st Airborne Division, United States Army. And his background is obviously law, but it's business law, so he's going to be a very, very nice addition to the Development Authority. I think he's going to bring a lot of expertise, and he rounds out the clan very nicely. And he will be here tonight for the swearing.
And I think Susan Cook is going to make it tonight. Possibly Tim Page. I know John's not going to be here. So I will swear them in, the ones that are here. Any other comments or questions about that?
No, but this is all a very, very good sign, what's going on between the police chief, the Development Authority, our planning, CBA. We're really moving along here.
Figure the chief, is he going to join us tonight?
I don't believe so.
I'm excited personally about the Development Authority just because I think it's probably, I don't mean to diminish any of the boards, but I think it's probably one of the most important boards that we have just simply because, well, they have a lot of power under state law to have bonding authority and tax incentives. They have a lot of tools in their toolkit, and thus, I believe, are one of the most important elements in any economic development that we will have. I think we think that MARTA will be on our radar in the coming year. I think the Development Authority will be an important player in that.
I agree. They have the opportunity to find the city, and I'm glad to see the council has at least a seat on that, and I hope that we end with somebody on there that understands what is going on, so that we can get a clear picture of what it is that they're pursuing, because they do have the right to and the opportunity to pursue things independent of us that put some financial burdens on the city.
Well, the appointments we've made, I feel really good that these are people of very high quality, finance and legal backgrounds, business backgrounds, and I know I personally look for people of just the utmost integrity. I'm well aware of development authorities that, what's the nice word for saying run amok?
There you go. I think that describes it best.
I'm going to go through the list once everybody hears it, okay?
Sure.
So for those of you who may or may not be aware of the list that dignitaries that have agreed to accept a position on the Development Authority, it's Walt Eamer. He's going to chair it. He's the president and CEO of the Waffle House. We've got Tim Peden, who is an attorney. He specializes in state and local taxes. Susan Coker, obviously Vice President and Treasurer of Cox Enterprises. We've got John Rett, who is an investment banker. Pat Hoban, who is active with the development of the city, and is CEO of Capital City Nissan. Luke Anderson, an attorney, specializing in intellectual property. And the seventh was Bruce Whitmer, who we talked about previously. So we have an excellent development authority, high talent, and they're going to be making very, very important decisions that's going to have a real impact on the direction of the city for decades to come. So we're really pleased with this.
Okay, then we've got the Chapter 15, the multifamily rental housing ordinance.
This is Chapter 18.
Chapter 18.
Chapter 18,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And this is the second read?
It is the second read. And Susan, I'm going to let you go ahead and just round it up, because Susan has been meeting with Jim, and again, I appreciate Jim's comments, and I know that you all had further meetings in the last week, so I think
I want to second it, and I appreciate Susan and Michael putting up with me, and I think at the end of the day, we ended up with an ordinance that covers the necessary topics. It's not overly onerous. It also respects the owner/landlord's rights and responsibilities, and gives them some opportunity to show us that they're willing to do some things before we bring out the big hammer. But we also have the big hammer if we need to go that route, both with the owner and landlord, but also with the inspector. I mean, we have the opportunity to double check the inspector and make sure that they've done their work, and they can be fined and/or they have the opportunity to give them a 5-year suspension, sort of the blackball if we find out that they're consistently not inspecting properly. So
These are inspectors.
yes, the inspector, suspended for
Suspended just from dealing with the city of Brookhaven?
That's correct. So, which is actually, that they can be fined, if there is an opportunity, and actually technically they can be jailed, but there are opportunities for judicial sentencing that can include fine, imprisonment, and/or exclusion, or take it off the list for a period of time.
Is this a state law?
Yeah.
What level of authority are you talking about?
Well, this is our code.
Yeah, yeah.
Under our code.
Under our code, yes. Yes. And it would be handled just like a zoning, and I'll let the attorney, but my understanding it would be handled just like a zoning violation. If they're given notice and don't cure, then they can be brought into court, and this sort of falls in that same category.
Was a criminal and administrative sanction.
Both.
Well, I just really appreciate all the work you've put in it, Susan, as well.
Thank you.
Kind of thrown a lot at you in your first 2 weeks. Yes.
There were a few minor changes that we talked about yesterday, and I assume those have been folded in more.
They have been.
Okay, 2 and 3. Okay.
Do we need to offer any amendments then when we bring this up?
I think the copy you have that
I just gave out.
Susan gave you includes the revisions from yesterday.
Okay.
But it's one, not the one in your packet, but the one that's placed before you.
On the table, okay.
An email this afternoon.
So what you want to do when you make your motion, you want to address which one that you're moving on. It'll be the second read, but it'll be the one that has been passed. That you need to just make a verbal.
There's a date at the bottom, it says revised 4/9.
If you
That one.
just use that as part of the motion on that, that'll lock in what you're actually passing.
On the marked up copy, there's the date at the footer.
This one says revised 4/9.
11 a.m. or 2 p.m. Did I see another one?
Well, that's one of them's chapter 7, one of them's chapter
Yeah, you're right.
18.
I'm sorry.
So if you're looking at chapter 18,
It's the revision dates at the bottom.
it's at the bottom.
Okay,
So just
4/9.
make reference to that.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I'm proud that we've got I think, an improved multifamily
Yeah,
ordinance
I
than
think
what
so.
we inherited.
I certainly have, yeah. I mean, it's made the rounds. I think we've kicked it up a little bit, and hopefully somebody will like it and take it forward, and they may find some things that they want to change. But I think, as Marie mentioned, that the key for us is that we put the third-party inspections in the ordinance, and we put the city inspections in policy so that it's out there. So if somebody wants to look and see what they need to be doing, then it's out there and available.
We've made comments before, each of us separately, about different talents that we bring to the table. And I just really want to applaud you. I think Jim has his talents in the real estate have really surfaced repeatedly, as he has in this case. And Susan, I think you mentioned that here. Thanks, Jim.
Well, no, I mean, we've got to look at things from both sides. We can't just look at it from the city side. We've got to look at it from the property owners, and just make sure that we at least acknowledge that there are property owner rights. We don't necessarily have to, we can do things to control them, but we do need to acknowledge that there are certain things that we do need to respect.
You bring the right perspective to it for the council.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And then we have chapter 7, the building regulations code. Again, that's a second read, and we're going to reference the revision of it as well.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct, but I believe that Councilman Iyer may have an additional comment on Chapter 7 regarding Section 7-1.
Yes. We were discussing before you came in that Section 7-1 is, we believe, is left over from the days when DeKalb was transitioning from private to public sewer and water. Don't believe it's necessary anymore. It's basically providing notice to tenants whether their sewer was public or private. I don't think that that's an issue anymore. Plus, I don't think it's also something that, even if it was, I don't think it's something that we as a city, because we're not providing water and sewer, we have jurisdiction over. So we're going to strike that Section 7-1. Yes, ma'am. That'll be struck. And then the other comments that we talked about yesterday are included in this latest revision.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Would you like me to point any of those out?
No, I think we talked about them beforehand. If there's anything that... Oh, what about the exterior finish section?
I actually discussed that with the legal department, and that is basically, that's left over from DeKalb County. And as you can see, there are several bullet items about that, so we left that as is. We did not touch that.
It says we allow log cabins.
I know.
But can they come back and haunt us? I mean, we've had some cases here recently where staff has dug up some pretty obscure sections of the code to sort of become hurdles for development. Is that something that's going to come back and become a review item on a checklist somewhere that needs to have brick or stone in the front of the house? Again, I mean, we've seen 3 lots. We've seen, there's been 3 or 4 different cases where they've dug up some obscure. And is this one of those that's going to come back and now we're going to get a plan review checklist item that says brick or stone in the front?
Well, there's kind of an exception here pointed out when you read.
What section is this, Susan?
This is, let me go back to the other page. It is actually on mine, it's on page 29, but I don't know if that's the page that you're on, but it's letter N on page 29.
Was it Section 7-1?
Let me see. One second.
We don't have page numbers.
Sorry, let me look through here real quickly.
Is it 7-16?
Let me see.
I believe that's the only N that I found with points underneath it.
That's the appeals of the
What?
building official's decisions.
No, complete.
The numbering changed.
The numbering changed, so I can't find it, so let me, flipping through here very quickly.
Oh, here it is. It is 7-522L. 7-522L.
Towards the end.
So if you look at L, it says the exterior wall facing the street of all residents shall have brick, stone, or real lath and Portland stucco installed with the following exceptions. If you go down to double I, pre-approved contract houses where the end user or architect specifies other materials. So there's an out there.
Well, that suggests that that's a, not, you know, if it was a spec built home, would it be considered a contract home? I don't think so.
No, there's an out for a pre-approved contract house. We
Yeah.
just saw that.
I mean, that almost sounds like a Sears, you know, the old Sears house where they came in on a trailer and they set it up, you know.
So these are just left over from the county. L with I through.
Do we really want to get into architectural review for exterior materials?
Well, does it even allow for a wood house?
Technically not. Not on the front. It has to be, this is only the facing the street. My vote would be to strike that in its entirety, because I don't know that we want to become an architectural review committee.
Log homes, that's the only wood houses we allow, log homes.
Or English, Georgia, or American Colonial Craftsman, all
I'd say let's get rid of it.
So you're saying remove all of L?
Personally, I'd want to see it go. Marie, have you had any experience?
I agree.
You know, I mean, you've been around the block with a few codes. Have you?
When you get into that level of specificity, it just draws appeals.
So we're going to strike 7.
This is the kind of thing you see in covenants, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Correct.
And that's where it belongs.
Or conditions of zoning?
Or conditions of
Right,
zoning. Yes.
All right, so this is 52
7-52
L.
7-52.2 L.
And then, Lord, all of that.
Actually, as a point of clarification, it's 7-52 section B, 2L.
Yeah, you're right.
Let's put that on the front so that we know what we're doing. This is K3. Can you repeat that again, Scott, please?
It's 7-52 subsection B, 2L.
Thank you.
And then you were going to move to strike section 7-1.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was one of those that I had read it twice. It's like,
And then we also made a change to the posting requirement for addresses and made it consistent with the IPNC and Chapter 18. Because there was a difference with how addressing occurred under Chapter 7 versus Chapter 18. And we corrected Chapter 7 to be consistent with Chapter 18 and with the IPMC.
This is section
International Property Maintenance Code.
Section 7-502, next to the last page.
Yeah, we had to change that. Yes, they have.
It's already been revised, so you don't.
Okay, so yeah.
That's
so
our
that-
period.
yeah.
All right.
I would have never known that had I not read the 18 the night before, you know, because the problem was is we had one
Two
required,
different
one
things.
required 4-inch letters, the other required 6-inch letters, and again, that's the kind of stuff.
That's what's been so difficult about bringing over these ordinances, is one, we're finding that in some ways they've grown like topsy over the years, and then we bring them over and attempt to clean them up, but I think we've done a pretty good job, but oh man, it's a huge task.
This also includes the additional language for setting up the advisory board. That was sort of the main change for this ordinance.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, with the number and then the quorum.
Yeah,
That was
yeah. So this allows for a construction advisory board to be established and run by the city of Brookhaven.
Okay. All right.
You look puzzled, Joe.
No,
Okay.
I'm glad you did.
Well, now, I mean, it was
Same,
in there.
thank you for all your efforts on this, for your help.
Again, we're, it's gotta be easier than it 30 years of code, it eventually gets cumbersome and needs to be cleaned up a little bit.
Okay, so then we're tabling item number 5 about the police IGA, and where are we on the IGA for solid waste management?
We actually are ready for someone to vote on it. I've got copies of it right here for everybody. And it is substantively the same as what we've seen before. We did look at and readdress some of the dates. And we do need to make the election by the end of the month, whether we're going to be having the once a week or twice a week pickup, as well as by the end of the month, Marie will talk with people over at Solid Waste Management to discuss some of the recycling options that we've got. Those were the 2 dates that we were looking at or questioning before, and the county was kind enough to extend the dates out to the end of this month too.
What's the issue with recycling?
All I know is that we're going to be talking about different options that they may be presenting possibly in the future. It doesn't actually specify anything here. It just says that by the end of the month, we're going to be having some conversations, possibly about where they're going, where we'd like to go.
So it still remains that by the end of this month, basically next council meeting, we'll decide whether or not it's going to be $260 a month, $65 a month, or $305.
Right, we'll put that as an action item
Right.
on your council agenda for you to make that decision.
Okay, and clarification is it's going to be 1 solid waste with 2 other pickups, yard waste and recycling for $265, or for $305, it's 2 solid waste, 1 recycling, and 1 yard waste,
Right.
as we have it today.
Right, and it's either one or the other citywide.
Right. How are we
Although
doing
the-
with the webpage input on this? Are we getting?
Are we still polling? Is that
still
poll
polling?
still up, I
Do
think?
what was the outcome of that? Anything of any magnitude?
That was before we started here, I'm sorry, I don't have any
I
information.
think it was pretty strongly in favor of the one-time pickup.
Just to keep the price the same.
Right.
Yeah.
And I saw where the one in DeKalb County that they ran was 60% in favor of the one-time.
So the message is they don't want a price increase.
Right. So this IGA just basically says we're agreeing to let contract with DeKalb to provide our sanitation services.
Now, does this cover, sanitation provides a number of other services. For instance, they manage some of the properties that the county owns in Drew Valley that were purchased as part of their FEMA grants. They've managed some rights of way or grass needs cut. I know they've helped us in the park on cleanup days. They provided, well, according to what I heard from Ted, it's sanitation that goes out, but they do, mow the grass in certain areas. I mean, is that included in here, or is that, were we not even?
I wasn't even aware of that. So are you
Okay.
saying that on certain properties that were purchased because they were in a flood zone,
Yes.
the county has been maintaining them?
That's my understanding, is
Okay.
that there's a dozen or more lots in the Drew Valley area that were purchased as part of FEMA flood control,
Okay.
and right now, the house has been taken down, they're vacant lots. And
County owns them.
County owns them.
County maintains them. If they use the sanitation department for maintenance, that's up to them. Or if they send public works out to cut them, that's up to them too.
Yeah, but it's my understanding that sanitation has sort of assumed maintenance of that. So again, I don't know whether it's formal or informal or what, but I just know that periodically, and they do it a couple times a year at best.
If it's their property, council member, I would assume that they have the opportunity to maintain it in any form or fashion, whether it's solid, whether it's the sanitation department cuts it, or whether.
I guess we have 2 questions. One, who's going to maintain it? And 2, is it something that we're going to acquire at some point in time as part of either the stormwater management program, or I guess my question is where do these properties because I know.
I'm just going to have to look into
Yeah.
that to see
Yeah.
you know, how they'd have to be conveyed.
Yes.
And if federal funds were used to purchase that, again, this is up for the lawyers to discuss, but I would be surprised that the county could charge us for those. It may just be a straight-up conveyance, to us, but I don't know what it
Yeah.
is. I don't want to say we want to accept it yet, because we need to better understand what it is that we're going to obligate ourselves to.
I mean, where they are.
Yeah,
There-
right, and there may be more than just that. I mean, maybe in other parts of the city where
Yeah.
properties are in the floodplain or zone, we just need to, but I appreciate you bringing it up, and I'll definitely
For instance,
inquire.
the Drew Valley Detention Fund, I mean, that's maintained by somebody. I know it's meant to go natural, but, there is some work to do. So there are several parcels that.
Well, that could be part of the stormwater utility
Yeah,
program by the
that-
county,
that-
especially if there's a pond in there that
Yeah,
they're maintaining.
but really the issue is maintenance. I mean, they go in and a couple times a year mow the grass and
Yeah.
just keep it knocked back.
Yeah, so the water
If we
can
take the
flow.
utility, we'll have to.
Right, right.
If they convey the properties, if and when they convey, because even with the stormwater utility, there is a property conveyance that would have to
Correct.
occur.
That's right.
But there might be other properties.
That's what I'm
We
saying.
were talking about this today, where the county has bought up some, like houses in the floodplain, and that
Yeah,
sort of thing. At some point, we'll have to decide whether the county continues to own them and maintain them, or whether they sell them to us or convey them to us, or...
Well, in my meetings with the county recently on this block grant program, there are some lots in Linwood
Yes.
that they purchased that they were trying to make available to bring developers in, and they still have a few parcels left. And there was discussion with me about what are we going to do about these. So
Well,
that's,
is that-
yeah, I know, yeah. They're nice lots.
There's some other land too, that, I think it was where the former playground or pool was at one point. It's kind of behind the houses on Osborne.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
it's a big tract of land.
8 or 9 acres that's
Yeah.
down. And there are other, I mean, there's miscellaneous things that have just been left over.
But at some point, we'll need to clarify who owns
Right.
those and whether there's something we can do with it,
Right.
or if they continue to control it.
Right.
There's 8 acres next to the Archway Apartments that y'all are looking at that's owned by the county that was supposed to have been an extension of Jordan Hills Park, but it never got developed, never got moved. So, there are a number of parcels, but again, the question was, discussions I've had with some county folks was, a lot of those things have been assigned to sanitation to maintain by default more than anything. I think they had the equipment, so they were told to go out and do it whenever somebody called and raised stuff out of it. They had to go out and do it.
Bill, have you ever come across this before? Your dealings and negotiating?
Not on these.
So what happens if we don't take the properties, they're not conveyed, and they're not maintained? What happens?
Well, the county will have to.
I would say the first.
Get my lawnmower?
I would say the first thing to do is to see if they purchase these lots and they put them into the utility. Because if we're taking up their stormwater utility, the utility has an ownership interest in some things, and other parts they don't. But if they took that as part of the stormwater utility, I would imagine once we take it over, that will be ours, and then we will be responsible for the maintenance of the property. If they didn't take it that way, and they just did it because they were not going to be sued anymore for flooding, and they didn't purchase it out of certain designated funds, they may just own that property, and that they'll still have to maintain the property. We'll look and see what the factual situation is how they own it.
I wonder if we'll have more clarity after we actually buy the parks and they identify, like maybe this land that was initially designated to be green space, or this 8 acres in Linwood Park that was formerly part of the rec center, or actually part of the school that's now the rec center. So maybe we'll get some clarity.
We will, yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
Talking about sanitation. Okay, I made a recommendation last council meeting for RFP to be prepared for the possibility of looking into alternate refuge collection. And I think we'd be remiss as a city if we didn't look into secondary options from a costing standpoint. I think the outcome of this look at a two-tier pricing conclusively shows that residents do not want to have their prices go up and are willing to take a lower level of service. So I think it's incumbent upon us to look at options that provide as a standard the DeKalb County Sanitation's level of service and quality, and see if we can exceed that in both service, minimally meet their criteria, preferably exceed it, but mandatorily beat it in price, especially if it would have a benefit on the city through the sharing of a franchise fee. You're early. So I've asked the city manager to continue pursuing the preparation of an RFP, if for no other reason to allow us to see what the opportunities could possibly be for us as a city. So I'll make one more comment and I'll open it up for feedback. I think criteria has to be, as I say, the criteria, it's got to be the DeKalb County criteria, but what I'd like to try and do is, in the RFP, is to state that we want a minimal test market, because it seems to be there seem to be problems in trying to do what I understood was supposed to be the basis for a test market. Test market, I was informed, was approximately what was described as 2,000 roofs, means 2,000 homes primarily. And I think what that justifies that is the tonnage of the refuge collected, whether it be recyclable or whether it be solid waste. That's not going to be probably a doable task for a variety of reasons. One of the constricting reasons is DeKalb County has stated that if any one of the residents within a neighborhood that may be participating in the test states that they do not want to participate in the test, DeKalb County then has to assume the responsibility to come from that resident. So that becomes a major restriction, potential significant problem in following through the test pilot area. So I'm going to recommend that we issue an RFP and we state that we want to negotiate out what is going to be a fairly tight, maybe one neighborhood type of situation. To test to see if indeed we can exceed the criteria that DeKalb has set, and if we can do it at a significant cost savings to the city, I'm saying significant, and still have the ability to participate in a potential franchise fee contribution from the supplier. So I'd like to open it up.
So you still want to do some sort of a pilot test of some sort?
Yeah, I don't want to put the city at risk with a whole program based upon what the information that I've collected so far. So the first criteria is going to be put it out for a price bid, and let's see what the potential savings are. So we're going to be principally working against the $265 cost and see if we can get that at a 4 pickup a week and exceed the service requirements that the Sanitation. I mean, they've given us an excellent bar to exceed. The bar that's out there right now is it's a high bar as far as acceptability and approval by citizens. They've challenged that now by trying to go out and raise the price. So now we have to compromise with the quality of the service, going from 4 to 3 pickups per week. If we can get it at 4 pickups per week, maintained at or below the current price, and preferably, if it proves, this is what I found out. With the potential service that's available, they provide a secondary container for recyclables. That's significantly larger. It's on wheels. It's not as big as the main container. They have shown conclusively in the areas that they've serviced that by providing this type of equipment, more people recycle, which is a great thing to achieve. We really want to try to have a higher level of recycling going on in the city. But the consequence, from a practical standpoint, is that when you recycle at a higher level like that, you have less solid waste. So the potential, the probability, the feasibility to move from a 2 solid waste pickups per week to 1 becomes much more reasonable. I mean, it's not being forced upon you because of a pricing situation. It doesn't require from a solid waste accumulation. The savings on that could be as high, from my estimates right now, it's 45% below what we're currently paying at the $265 level, which is significant, and it would still allow a contribution of a franchise fee from the sanitation company which I'm going to recommend should and if this become a reality, that money be used for a beautification project for keeping Brookhaven beautiful. So I'm going to throw that out there to you guys.
I guess two questions. One is, does the agreement that we're approving tonight contemplate that pilot program?
The only thing that this is going to interfere with tonight, if we approve this, is that's a 180-day notice. It's my original intention, so we just have to remember it's going to be 180 days. So we may not be working on a calendar year if we decide that the program was successful. Here's what I see. If the program is successful, we would definitely probably keep it going, which would just be a further test of it. We'd have to initiate a 180-day notice, and then it would roll out for the entire city. But by then, we would certainly have our ducks in order of what has to be done.
But again, even the pilot program, is that
well, that has to be that has to be negotiated under the umbrella of the current agreement. And
you may not even be willing or ready to go to the pilot program depending upon what kind of pricing you get on the bid.
Correct.
Right. I mean, that's going to be the
Right.
determining factor. Does it make sense? Is it enough of a cost savings?
Right.
And does that then, that answer, does that then promote you to the next level? Do you initiate a pilot program?
I presented the ideas in order of them having to occur in order to see if they would be worthy to continue.
And I guess the other concern is, of all the things that I heard bad about the cab, sanitation was the only thing that I heard good about the cab.
That's what I'm saying. They set a high bar.
I guess my question is, are we in a position now with current staff and current programs that we're working on to pursue this, or is this something that we may want to put off for a period of time when we feel like we've got a few things a little more settled and a little bit more bandwidth, a little bit more time.
We may definitely want to do that
to pursue it, make sure that it's right.
Well, the RFP obligates us to nothing. It begins the process, and I think it opens our eyes, and we say, hey, yeah, this is a possibility. We think we want to do this. We may come back and say, let's not do it for a year. But at least, I think we'll know.
I applaud the effort. I think it's a great thing to explore. We've taken what was, a monopoly, and we're introducing competition to it. So I'm behind it, and I think it's a great idea to look at. And I just want to make sure that the agreement that we have is there anything that would prevent us from putting a pilot in place with, let's say later this year?
Well, we have to get agreement from the county, because if we do go to phase 2, which is to try to launch a pilot program, we have to be sure that the county agrees to that, because that means those customers have to be removed from their collection or their assessment.
Right.
And so that's number one. We're going to have to be sure that whatever the boundaries of the pilot area, that we get 100% participation, because you're not going to get as much interest from a vendor who want to go in there and try and figure out, am I picking this one up and I'm leaving this one out? And we don't want trash cans out on the street all week long if we've got the cab some of the days and we've got the vendor on the other. So it really has to be, one, we have to look at the price to see what kind of pricing we get back. And I would recommend that, that the pilot area be a small enough area, because again, if you get somebody that opts out, then there goes the whole route. Correct. So if we size it down, and we could include that in the RFP, that the route could be A or it could be B, to get pricing on both, and then it would be up to the city to try and get that many yeses. Secondly, not only to go back to the idea of getting the county to agree to this, when they assess for trash pickup, it rides on your tax bill, correct?
Right.
So that means they're still going to collect it, and there's going to be, whether the pilot program is 90 days or 120 or even 30 days, whatever that might be, how does that vendor get paid? We don't want the citizen to be billed, because now they feel like they're going to get billed twice.
Yeah.
So do we work that out in the RFP, and we have to work with the lawyers on this, but that would be a delayed payment, perhaps, so that when, the county would have to remit that portion of who's left out. I mean, there's a number of issues to address. Is it insurmountable? I don't know that it is. I think if you're willing to go to the point of preparing the RFP and hitting the streets with it to see what kind of response you get, that's really going to be your litmus test. That's going to, whatever price comes back, that's going to determine for you all, do we really want to move forward with this? And then if it is something, that you do want to move forward with, we've got to get buy-in from the county to be sure they're willing to
I agree.
opt out on that. But
I think that it's something that the RFP is, I applaud the effort. It's innovative, and I like to look at it. If it's not overly burdensome, I don't know how much it takes to get an RFP put together, but that's the idea. I think that the price is going to drive whether or not we go further down.
correct. And we, as Mr. Gebbia said, we have the standard in which to include in the RFP. That's the counties. And I've had some initial conversations with Ted Reinhardt on this, and it was his suggestion, use our standard, price it out against that on what we do. So again, that's going to be the easy part. The other side to get and attract the vendors to bid is how do we make that route meaningful to the vendor in which to come in. And again, not to throw any cold water on the idea, but there are things we're going to have to consider. What do we do with people's cans? Can the vendor use the cans that are already out there that the homeowner has? So all of those points have to be addressed, but if you're looking for price and you can get a good price, then that allows you to go to the next step.
It could be significant.
Well, and
Right.
I think,
And there's an incentive program too that could come back to the city.
And I think that the citizens, if the price changes, price savings is that significant, citizens may be willing to go for it without the pilot program. But I think it's a great idea to have a pilot. It certainly, I believe, will add to some of the complexity of the change. But the other thing to factor into it is that it could be a one-year contract pilot. And if DeKalb County is not opposed to taking us back after a year, it could be a one-year pilot where it has economic size to make it doable for vendors.
So one of the other real benefits of this, and we've mentioned it, but it's not really being highlighted, is the increase in recycling.
Yes.
That's huge.
Oh, that's great. It goes with my idea of wanting to have a green city. I very much want
Well, on
us
the
to
other
be.
hand, I would say
It's probably the most significant thing we could be doing as a city to enhance
recycling is probably one of the most successful things that DeKalb does.
Yeah, but
They're actually producing methane gas from their,
but
their
the level of
landfill.
participation
Yeah.
is like 20%.
Well, in my neighborhood, I'd say it's
Yeah,
more
mine's a lot more than
85.
that. Now that it's free.
Yeah.
What I've been told is it's substantially below what it could be.
Is that from the cab or is that from the vendors?
That's from the vendors.
Okay.
Okay, but still,
I would just-
it wouldn't even be validated, but
Well, part of the problem is they don't really have an opportunity to do commercial, and that's something that we need to start working on, is providing some type of incentive for commercial recycling. We see at City Hall, people are taking home the recyclables because Dunwoody doesn't have a program, and it's really more about just providing space for that extra bin.
Some of the larger employers, in my experience in other cities, and I'll just give you an example, Johns Creek, some of the large companies there, they do their own recycling because of the money that comes back to them, selling their cardboard and certain chemicals, and so it becomes a real business for them because it offsets other costs. So there may be that going on, and you don't see the compactor coming in and picking up all the recyclables from that company, a lot of white paper that's going out. So
I don't mind pursuing as long as it doesn't take away from the things that are currently on the docket that we need to get set up and put to bed at this time, like getting started with police and moving into new city hall and all this.
I think we're used to handling our workload here.
Well, again, you're right. We can't
That's fine, I
underestimate
appreciate that comment.
Yeah, so.
I would just urge caution on this, just because, one, it wasn't one of the issues that was promoted in forming the city. Sanitation was not one of the services we ever, said we would take on. I applaud the idea of looking for competitive bids. If there's a huge cost savings, I'd say, let's look at it. So let's do the RFP. I'd want to, I think you got to think carefully about the pilot. And I too would agree with Jim. I think we've got so much on our plate right now. We've inundated our department heads with all kinds of things. We're trying to get the police department up, we're trying to support up. We've got development coming down the pipe. We're just now gearing up our planning commission. Zoning's just starting to come in. Our permit departments are pretty much slammed. So let's make sure we're getting all of those departments really running smoothly before we take on too many other projects.
And even from a logical standpoint, you know, it makes sense to look at January 1 as your start date for any pilot program, because you can build annually for your assessment. So you know that there's some clean breaks, just from that standpoint. So
yeah, we're in no rush to do this.
Yeah. So again, I'm not discouraging. I just want to make sure that it doesn't end up getting becoming a burden that hinders something else we've already committed to. So okay.
Well, we can use the standard of the county, and the finance department, who has Brad Middlebrook in there, the purchasing manager, can help us prepare that RFP and get it out. And I think what we can take a look at is the standard of the two types of services the county is willing to offer. That will be the standard in which we request proposals and bids, and then we can, Mr. Gebbia, we can determine, what the multiple size routes are, so that we can give the vendor an opportunity to, if 200 houses will do it, or does it have to be 2,000 or 1,000 just to do a pilot, and the idea of initiating the pilot, if you all choose to go that way, to that next step. I like the idea of January 1 because it is an even break, because I think it would be difficult to try and get the county to remit those funds back to us. And if we put this out on the street and take the appropriate time and go through vetting with legal, it's going to take
You're going to have an issue, because you're always going to have an issue, because either you're going to bid it out where the vendor has to do the reporting, because in cities who have private haulers, those cities have to they have to manage those private haulers and do all the deliverables back to the state of Georgia on their recycling streams and everything else. So either we're going to have to embed a cost into a bid and see if the private haulers are going to do that and hold us harmless to the state.
Well, thank you for bringing that, because we've got to be sure we don't trip ourselves into creating and being mandated to develop a solid waste plan.
And I think that the ones that bid on it are probably, they do this in other municipalities, they're probably in Georgia already. So I think they're probably, the good ones are going to be aware of it.
You know how to make the RFP legal, so we're protected, right?
What I'm telling you is that
the cities
that I work in that have private haulers, they have to have a solid waste plan, and they manage their own solid waste plan, and it can take up to 1 FTE.
Yes.
To manage your solid waste plan, especially if you're a multi-hauler city.
Right.
And the uptake of making sure that they're hitting all their criteria, there is an enforcement piece that you're going to build into a privatized system that we're already paying for and not having to do service delivery with the system that's presently in place. So it's not simply going to be a matter of they're going to drive the streets and pick up the garbage, but you're either, and I have thought about doing that previously, to try to build out a way to hold harmless in a private, on basically a single franchise private provider system, for them to have to take the uptake on it, and they have to embed all that in their costs, and they have to do the reporting to the state, and they have to give us a hold harmless if they don't do it right. Yeah. But I have not had the opportunity to do it at this point in time, and so it had, at least in my history, I haven't done it. But I know that I've thought about having to do it, but you just need to understand that you're taking on a whole different kind of powers other than just picking up garbage when you get there.
Interesting.
Unintended consequences.
Yeah, really. Thanks for sharing that.
I'd like to give us a little bit of a break. I think we have some sandwiches for you all, and we'll reconvene at 7. So, meeting adjourned.
Thank you all.